Wow, that was such a great podcast. Last episode 11. Now we're going to stay tuned to watch episode 12. Serenity Winz. Serenity Winz. Hey. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Serenity Winz. That's right. You see the little hashtag 12? That's not a hashtag. That's to let you know that we're on episode number 12. And wow, I haven't seen you guys in a long time. I say sarcastically because I'm taping 2 in one night, but that's all right. It's the detail. Don't even need to mention that anymore. What do I say last time? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. All right. So, yeah, that'll be the last time I say that. Oh, I'm doing 2 in one night. Nobody cares. But I care. Yeah. So, where do we start? Episode number 12. I got a lot of fun stuff also to share with you guys because it seems the more and more, let go, let God that we talked about last week. It seems the more and more I kind of go about my week and I talk to some people and I share, the podcast, and I meet some really talented people. And yesterday was one of those things. And so I want to start off, this is a good question now. Do I start off right away with the cool stuff? Oh, look, I got something in my hand. Or do I go with the whole mumble, bumble, blum, the whole kind of official stuff that needs to be said? All right, let's do the official stuff that needs to be said. Get that out of the way. All right. So, welcome. All right, I said that already. Our serenity prayer. Yes. So you can fill in whatever words you want. Some of you now are used to me saying JD because that's what it is to me. Dear God, dear this, dear that, power, higher self, a source, nature, love, whatever word you want to fill in, as you see it. I've been calling him JD because he's my JD, right? So, dear JD, give me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change those that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between both. Very, very important. It's the wisdom, right? It's important to know the difference between what I can change and what I can't change. And then now we go into the not officially sponsored by AA. We are now, I have to go more into deals. Well, so this podcast, Serenity Winz, is not at all affiliated, associated, or sponsored by any official nonprofit organizations such as Alcoholics Anonymous. This is very true. This is a podcast that I thought about a few months ago, and now I'm putting in full gear. At the same time, we are happy to say that Serenity Winz is now sponsored by Cruzo, a wonderful furniture and decorating company that specializes in importation from Indonesia. So they have a lot of beautiful teak wood furniture, chairs, tables, coffee tables, you name it, they have it. They have stuff for you to put in your kitchen, in your living room, in your bathroom, in your bedroom, even outside in the garden. And hey, if you want to take one of those armoires and put it in your garage to hold your tools, guess what? You can do that too. So as you can see at the bottom of my screen, or your screen, I should say, there's a promo code SWD as in Serenity Winz discount 10, SWD 10. And you punch in that code when you're on their online at cruzo.ca, and you will receive a 10% discount on all your purchases online. And this is applicable only to Canadian shoppers. Very important. He is in the process of working with, getting to the United States because he's expanding fairly quickly. It's a great company. If you get a chance, really go and watch them. But right now, the promo code is really only for Canadian shoppers. But you can be anywhere in Canada. You can be in Newfoundland. Well, the Newfoundland people, they don't talk like Indian people, but this is the accent that I got. You could be in like, oh, dude, surfing out in the BC. You could be in Manitoba. I don't know. Manitoba. Do they have sheep over there? I don't know. You could be anywhere across Canada and take that promo code. So remember, when you do your purchase online, there's going to be a little box somewhere that says, do you have a promo code? He goes, I do. And then you punch in SWD10 for a 10% discount. Okay, we got all that stuff out of the way. But it's cool. We have stuff full of gratitude. I got stuff. I got stuff to take care of. Hey, whoa, wait a minute. Before I get into this, I got to take care of some stuff. All right. Now, having said the stuff, which is awesome, by the way, I'm full of gratitude for that. I met a wonderful person, a wonderful artist. I really like what she did. And guess what? Remember that concept, let go, let God? I didn't even have to go far. She was literally just around the block from where I live. Yesterday, great day, a great weekend, I should say, great weekend. So yesterday, on the way back from my meeting, my usual noon discussion meeting, I stopped and there's a car show in the park across the street from where not from where I live, but like the major park there, major Plaza Citoyenne, as they call it. And there's like a major car show. And of course, my friend Peter, who's got the Chevy 62, he's there. So I stopped by. Actually, I went first to him. I figured, okay, I'll say hi to him first. And then I could take my time and mosey around some great cars. I took a few pictures, and perhaps later on, if I know how to do the Twitch thing and how to put photos at the same time as I'm doing a live, then I'll be able to show you some of those images. Excuse me. So, walking back home, I see a fellow that I recognize from a few years ago when I used to hang out in another town and go to a certain bar. And he was, I could tell that he was still partaking, I should say. But he was part of an exposition that they were doing in the venue that was just there. Basically, they were on the outside wall, but the venue was inside. But anyways, and so I started talking with him. And at one point, there was this huge painting that I really liked. Like, I saw it and I was like, wow. And I was thinking of getting it. But I was like, do I really have money to spend, that kind of money to spend on that painting? And where would it go and this and that? And then at one point, as I'm thinking this, a huge gust of wind just blows the thing and it falls literally right in front of me. Bam! I'm like, whoa. And I'm thinking, okay, is that a sign? I still did not purchase it because I was like, I wasn't convinced. But I was wondering, is that a sign? So there was a few other artists. And as I'm walking by, at one point, I see this work. And it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but there was something about it. And it was, of course, this girl who covers her eye and she's in a hoodie. And then you could see in the background, there's like silhouettes of people, right? The whole concept that we talk about every now and then, the identity and all that, and the hidden eye. But the way it was done, there was something about it. And so I started talking with the artist because she was right there, and I said, and I asked her literally point blank. I said, "Is that a secret meaning? Like, were you referring?" She goes, "Yeah, kind of." And we started talking, and then she had, and then I saw another one. I said, "Is that Amy Winehouse?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's Amy Winehouse." And so we had a nice conversation, very sweet. And then I mentioned to her that I was doing a podcast, and she was like, and about my recovering sobriety. Or my recovering. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Yeah. Anyway, my sobriety, and then right away she just shares with me some personal stories that I'm not going to share here, unless I get her okay. But she understood. She really understood, and then I was telling her how eventually I'd like to have like a graphic artist or something because of my opening, right? The famous spaceship. We're aliens and we like, right. And I said, yeah, eventually I'd like to have like an artist or something. I had even asked a friend of mine to do a drawing. And when I told her that, she was like, oh, wow. So who knows if down the road you start to see some really cool drawings on the show, it might be her. And so we had a really nice conversation. It was a short, obviously. I didn't stay an hour there and cramp her style, but it was a good 15 minutes. And she had, and I didn't tell her because obviously, guys can't tell her that. And I told her you should listen to the podcast, but I don't know if she's going to listen to this one. She might listen to another one, but she had these blue eyes. It was just like looking into the ocean. It was like, wow. So, yeah, I don't know what that means, but I just remember her eyes. I mean, I remember more than her eyes. I remember the conversation. Hey, là, tu commences à mettre ton pied dans ta bouche, là. All right, okay, I'm going to move on. So, anyways, she left me her card, and I don't know if I can do justice with my camera here. Oh, yeah, cool. And she was sharing with me that she is currently exposed in one art gallery in Montreal. And, she's looking for other art galleries. Oh, look, there's even like a code. So I guess if you guys could like capture that, and if you can capture that, capture the code. And so her artist name is Amy. And my light is really terrible because I got a blue light. I got a blue light. All right. Make a note. Have a little light for the little things that you need to light. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. Hold on. Are you still there? The people watching are like, we can't see anything. You're not on screen. You're right. Okay. So her name is, I'm not going to give you her number, but her name is Emily. Emily, you can go on Boisvert. Oh, wait a minute. Is that her website? You could tell that I haven't done this very often, right? Boisvert at outlook.com. Okay, that's her email. I don't know what that would do to give you her email. Okay, well, oh, and here's another. This is actually her card, so you could see. I didn't want to get into what do the two rams banging into each other mean, but it's very, very beautiful. Those of you listening on YouTube, I'm actually holding a card next to the camera. You might want to stop what you're doing and just look temporarily. If you're driving, keep driving. But if you're gardening, then you can stop and just take a look at. My arm is getting tired from holding this card, but anyways, you'll get an idea. And so her name is Amy, and I asked her to listen to the podcast, and if she likes it, she might reach out to me. And if she does see the podcast and she does see the spaceships with the aliens, actually, there's no aliens. I wanted to draw aliens driving, but I didn't think I had enough talent to do that. And I also figured, it's probably more fun that you don't see the aliens. You see the spaceship, so you know that they're listening to the podcast, but you don't see them, right? So maybe she'll do like one of those drawings where you see a spaceship, but you don't see the aliens. Because everyone has their own imagination of what the alien is. I know I do. Yeah. So I have an imagination and I imagine what aliens look like. And maybe you imagine aliens that are like different and that's all right because there's different types of aliens in this world. I'm getting lost in my conversation. Truth be told, Emy, she's a really talented artist, and I will do a better job next time that I meet another artist and I say, you know what, I'm going to take down your website and instead of just taking a card. Now that we got that out of the way, and I look forward, I mean, if there is a chance where she does get in touch with me and she does say, hey, I have a concept. I'd like to do a drawing for your show. I'm like, whoa, that's totally cool. Okay, just so you know, we're going to get into today's topics. And the first one is actually something that I heard during one of our meetings. And it was based on a reading from the Daily Reflections, right? Which is a book that you can purchase. I guess you can get it online on Amazon, wherever. It's in our literature. So whenever we go to meetings, there's actually a little section where people can purchase books. And it's called Daily Reflections. We read it in French because obviously it was in a French group. I have it in English. Uh, but I don't think it's necessary that I actually read the page. I think it was just the subject matter that's that's the point. And it is our first topic is humility versus ego. And this was actually a member during the discussion who was explaining that whenever he senses that he's kind of being triggered or he's in a state where he's reacting, he catches himself and realizes that he's in his ego, and that when he's in humility, there's love there, or he feels like he connects more with his higher self, his higher spirit. And at the end of the meeting, I walked up to him and I asked him a question, and this is where it gets interesting. I said, I love humility versus ego. I completely understand the concept. I'm also of the opinion that we do need a little ego. It's part of who we are. And he responded, and this is where it gets interesting. He said, no. Ego is always going to get us into trouble. Ego is a different way, but humility is the way. And I responded and I shared with him. I said, I'm going to think about that and we'll get back on that subject sometime soon. And after that conversation, I said, wow, that's going to be a really good topic to talk about on Serenity Winz. Because I don't know. I do believe, success doesn't happen by accident. Success, and as much as I want to believe that, let go, let God, and get out of the way, still there's certain elements that add to a person's, success, whatever that definition is. And my hypothesis, ego is part of that. Ego is also our survival. If we don't have ego, now granted, as an alcoholic, I can have, a tendency to blow up my ego, boom, like the ego won't fit through the door. What do you mean it don't fit through the door? It's gotta fit through the ego is something. It's not everybody who gets it. I don't have an ego. I am just a very humble. I'm the humblest of humble. The humble person. I have no ego. Yeah, right. I believe that when I see it. Okay, there are extremes in terms of ego and, ego, egotistical, those two words, they kind of float close together. But to agree with the other member to say that ego is baggage, it's not necessary. I'm not ready to say that. I'm not. I'll still say that ego is part of our survival mechanism. Understanding how our ego can set us off or where it triggers, that's very important. But you can minimize, right? We talked about that in a couple of shows. We talked about reducing our ego, but to entirely get rid of it, Not sure that's doable. I'm not sure that's safe. I'm not even sure that's a good thing to do. I wouldn't even know how to do that. Like, I feel that if I was to start getting completely rid of the ego, I probably sound like a crazy person. No, I would, right? Because then everything is about humility and everything is about love. And then I start talking and preaching. Now, granted, I am doing a podcast based on spreading his word. What word? I don't know. But that's part of my deal with him. I'm going to spread your word. But if I was to really say, he speaks to me and I share him and I feel the love. But even if I started doing that, that would still be my ego, right? Because I'm still that character. I'm like, I feel the love. So maybe what the other member was saying, it's not the ego. Maybe what he was pointing at was the illusion of the ego. I don't know. I'm trying to help find the answers to that. As time progresses, I am witnessing the power of humility. Whenever I'm in humility, I feel it. And I do agree with him in terms of you are closer to love when you are vibrating in humility. Some could even say you are closer to your God, to your spirit, to your higher self. And to say that I can only be in that state or even remain in that state all the time, no, not me. Nope, I can't do it. I don't know if I don't know if any of you listeners can do it, but I certainly can't. And I already find, and maybe this is my ego, I already find that I'm doing a really good job compared to a lot of people, like a lot of people, like even members within, you know, I hear them speak and I could see that they have some resentment and they're just talking about a story that doesn't really affect them, but I can hear the resentment in their voice and whatever it is that's setting them off, that's the leftover. And even with that difference, like I talked about it in the last episode, you will rarely get me to partake in gossip because to me, gossiping is definitely ego. It's like, oh, let's talk about this person when they're not around because it makes us feel better because, ha ha ha, we don't feel that good, right? And so I'm not at the point where I tell people, okay, stop, you know, but I'm at the point where I'm silent. And if I can discreetly, walk away, change rooms, get up, stand up, do something, go elsewhere, I'll do that. Because for me, when you talk about, and it's also something I've heard a few times, and I agree 100%. If you talk about a person when they're not there, that means that your life is so boring, you can't even talk about yourself, right? And so maybe one of the things to understand would be the definition. What would be our definition of humility? Perhaps that's a good place to start. Let's find ourselves some definitions of humility versus some definitions of what the ego is or is not. And this way, we can start to see, okay, based on this definition, humility. Whenever I have a chance to say that I did something great to others to make myself feel good, I will stop myself because in the end, nobody cares. Right. Whenever I have a chance to share with someone something good that I did because it's going to make me feel better, I will stop myself. Humility. And why is it humility? I think because we're just doing the work. We're just doing the word. We're doing the work of our higher self. And he doesn't need us to announce it. We don't need to announce the great things that we do. Many episodes ago, I talked about the people who claim to be generous, and every time they give something, they talk about it and they share it. And but in the end, they're just making you feel a certain way so that you have like an IOU, a debt, right? Because if they really were generous, the mentioning would not even take place. They wouldn't have to remind a person that they were generous or that they. But the fact that they do remind, it's because it's their way of saying, "Well, now you owe me." And I agree with that. I agree with if you're generous, nobody nobody cares, number 1, and nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to know. That's humility. That's you're doing it out of love. You don't need anyone to notice your generosity. You don't need anyone to notice the good things that you've done. So every now and then when I do talk about the podcast, see, I was touching my face. I was touching my face there, right there. Whoa. Last time, by the way, I was watching the video on from last week's taping, and it was very jittery. And I'm wondering if this one's going to be very jittery. That's why I'm saying you got to listen to the podcast. You can't watch it anymore. I mean, I know I'm a good-looking guy. Oh, that sounds like a lot of humility right there. Yeah, you're right. But I am. It's a work in progress, folks. In all, truth be told, this podcast is really made to be listened to and not watched. So maybe the fact that the video is jittery, it's kind of getting people to slowly go, oh, you know what? Instead of watching him, I'm going to listen to him, which would totally be cool, right? That's the whole idea, to do a podcast. And I am putting more and more effort in remaining humble. And I have to share with you, it is challenging. It's challenging for myself. And I noticed that it's challenging for people to be humble. What is the definition of humble? Humble is to do great things or even little things, good things for others. Because if you do it for yourself, you kind of know, right? You know. But if you do it for others and you don't even let them know about it, that means you're doing it out of kindness. You're not doing it out of the validation of others or the recognition. You're not doing something so others go, oh, I saw you did that great thing. That was very kind of you. Because if they say that, then, I mean, unless, of course, they really just saw you and you didn't even notice that they were there. But if you bring it up, then that becomes an ego thing, right? If you decide to make a generous donation and then you have a plaque on a wall, well, sure, it's a good thing, but you also have the ego. There's a great episode. I don't know if you folks like Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Oh, man, there's an episode with Ted Danson, and Ted Danson's the anonymous donor, right? He donated an entire wing. And Larry David, he's got a plaque with his name on it, but everyone knows that Ted Danson is the anonymous donor because Ted Danson mentions it. He says, I'm the anonymous, And so everyone's pissed off at Larry because he had to have his name on the plaque. But he doesn't go around telling people that, obviously his name is on the plaque. While the anonymous donor, quote unquote, Ted Danson, is sent accolades and people love him and they hug him and, they thank him. But he's the anonymous donor. And so Larry David did a great, show about the irony of, people who say that they're generous when in the end, it's just a matter of validation. And I agree with that. And sometimes I catch myself, again, far from being, perfect. And every time I catch myself, it's faster. I'm like, oh, I caught myself. And it's too late to say I'm sorry. And I don't really have to say sorry to anyone, maybe myself, but and I don't think, we talk about within the movement, the method, we talk about the growing spirituality, not well, I'll say it in French. Nous parlons de croissance spirituelle plutôt que de perfection spirituelle. So basically, we're talking about croissance, growing, spiritual growth versus uh, perfection growth, or spiritual growth. Yeah, and that's true. So we can't. It's difficult to be an angel all the time. And every now and then when I catch myself, I'm like, okay, you missed that one, but that's okay. Next time you'll know. And sometimes I think I'm being humble, and I think there's humility there, and it's clearly ego. It's clear like my ego going, yeah, hey, yeah. But I disguise it as being, the humility. One of the things I studied in one of those apps that I was using was how to receive a compliment. And it seems like something, you know, bland and banal, but in reality it's important. And I do admit that I learned from that application, the one that I'm thinking of letting go, but finally I'm still going to let it go. Truth be told, I'm going to let it go. I did learn quite a few things from it. I didn't learn as much as I wanted, and it's not what the advertisement was. And it also showed me a few things. And one of the things it talked about was how to receive a compliment. Because I used to receive a compliment and I'd be like, oh, it's not me, really. And they explained that, if a person gives you a compliment, they took the time to notice what you did. So it's important to acknowledge that. Now you don't have to go, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a great guy. I can do this and do that. I can do photography for you. I could take a picture of you naked and make you look like a Mona Lisa or something, or John Atisa, whatever. Yeah, I can make. Oh, it's not about that. But to recognize that they took the time and they wanted to share that with you, it's important to say, thank you. That is very kind of you to say. And within the app, they also say, well, you can ask them a question also. What is it particularly that you like? And then close with saying something like bringing it back. And I don't have like the perfect answer. But since I've heard that, it's happened once or twice that people have shared, and I just went along with it rather than what I would do before. It was like, oh, it's nothing. Especially now that I'm quote unquote the l'accueil du nouveau. By the way, I didn't do my homework. I said I would tell you how to say that in English. I still don't know how to say that in English. It's been a busy week. I've been running around and taking care of stuff. So l'accueil du nouveau, right? You go in front and you welcome the person who's suffering, or the person who's going to, admit that they have a drinking problem. And when I went up to the microphone, and I did that last week, because this week it was the girl, because there's a guy and there's a girl, and because I can't say her name, I'm just going to say it's the girl. I asked for my higher source, well, my JD, right? I asked for JD. JD, bring out the words, let them flow through me, and so some folks shared with me how they were moved and touched. And rather than doing what I had been doing all the way up to like maybe 2 weeks ago by going, oh, thanks, but it's not, I was like, thank you. And really like acknowledging it. And I think the difference too is I'm acknowledging it and transferring it to my humility drawer versus perhaps what I was unconsciously doing, which was acknowledging it and putting it into my ego drawer, right? Maybe when we learn to accept a compliment and we learned where that compliment should go, Should it go to our heads where we can't pass through the door? Or should it go through some sort of experience that we can remember and at one point call upon and go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And so that's what I'm doing now. So rather than taking compliments and saying, oh, it's not me, and probably on an unconscious level, growing my ego somewhere, now I'm actually, thank you. I'm very touched by that. And I will make sure to make that a humbling experience for the next time that I do something. And so that's a great exercise for me, and you're welcome to do that to understand the difference between humility and ego. Because I think also the ego, definitely in my case, uh, brings you to believe certain things that aren't always true. Like your reality becomes distorted. And I've heard that a few times in Alcoholics Anonymous, where the reality of an alcoholic is somewhat distorted you know, from truth. And by remaining in humility, I guess we could call it a guardrail that'll just make sure that okay, let's stay in this third dimension of reality. We're not at the fourth yet. We want to reach the fourth, and maybe eventually we'll really figure it out and understand it. But right now, let's remain here on the third, and maybe through love we get to the fourth dimension. This is a theory. This is my hypothesis, but we're still a long ways to go for that. So, yeah. Hey, I've been chatting now for about half an hour. That's a great topic, by the way. Humility versus ego. And I want to take a little break before we get into our next our next topic. I can't believe I'm going to say our next topic. I'm not even sure exactly how to bring this up, but I did think about it a few weeks ago, and I'll explain to you why I'm actually going to go through this. But before I do, you know, I'm thinking more and more folks will be listening to Serenity Winz because there's always some sort of reminder of how, gratitude goes a long way and how life isn't always great. And no matter what kind of bad stuff could be happening, if you're struggling with alcohol or drug addictions, I mentioned a few episodes ago how some people, they really have a dark, dark, dark world in terms of how they feel inside. And yeah, there have been people who thought of not wanting to live anymore, and sadly, there have been people who succeeded at doing exactly that. There has been people who died in car accidents under the influence, and so maybe if you share this podcast with someone who's suffering, you could be saving a life. Maybe you could be making a difference or maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're going, "Wow, I never thought of that." But now that so, and part of that is about me being authentic and sharing my journey as, an alcoholic. And my journey as an alcoholic also includes like what happens throughout the week. And this is what I want to talk about. So this week, I had, I guess the best way to describe it was a crazy date. Now, it was crazy. And not for the reasons you may think, although there was some of that, but other reasons altogether. And so this was a person that I had seen a few times. And at one point we exchanged phone numbers, and then throughout the week we're like just slightly texting each other. Very, very little texting, not a lot, because I'm not a big texter. And at one point I said, it'd be really, I forgot how I wrote it in French, but I was saying, if the universe made it that we could see each other tonight, that'd be really cool. Is this possible? And she responded, I can make this possible. I was like, all right, cool, right on. So I'm thinking, I'm going to go on Thursday night and I'm going to have a date and we're going to have a great time. Practicing the detachment aspect, I'm let go, let God. I'm not even thinking about it. I finished working on my clients. I go to my meeting at 5 o'clock, come back home, chilling. And I had even said to myself, you know what? Because I figured, it's probably going to be after her shift. So maybe around 9 or 10 or something. So I said, you know what? I'm going to catch up on some work about 10 o'clock, 10:30. Still no news. So I'm thinking, okay, well, she does work in the restaurant business. So clearly sometimes they get overloaded and they're busy. And I'm not going to send her a text, and hey, where are you? Whatever. I'm not that type. Finally, around 11:30, I'm like, okay, you know what? Something happened or whatever happened. It doesn't matter. I'm completely detached from the situation. I'm like, I said, you know what? It'll be another time. No biggie. I'm all good with that. Let go, let God. So I go to bed. I go to sleep. At 12 o'clock, my phone rings. Midnight, right? I'm the guy who's usually in bed by 10:30, 11, depending on how my day was. At midnight, my phone rings. It says, "Hi. So what are you doing?" And I'm literally in bed, lying down, naked. I've already probably slept like 2 or 3 minutes and I'm not even aware of it. And I respond, not much. And she says, "So you're gonna come and join me?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me I'll put on a pair of jeans and I'll be there in about 15 minutes." And I literally do that. I get out of bed, obviously I put on some boxers first, put on a pair of jeans, put on a shirt, and I kind of just get out the door. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what are you, nuts? And I know a while ago, I probably would have said, it's 12 o'clock. There's no way. But one, she was very cute. But our energy together seemed to be, there was something there. It was like, and I didn't know her that well, but, I had seen her a few times after her shifts or whatever. So there I am walking. She meets with me like right next to that restaurant. There's a little bar. And so I see her and she's sitting in a chair and it's like, "Oh, hello." And she starts and she's just like this little vivacious bomb of energy. Just like all over the place. And she's like with her friend and who's the bartender and this and that. And she's just kind of sipping a beer and everything, And then, of course, the bartender looks at me and goes, "What do you want?" I said, I wasn't like thinking, "Oh, I need a beer" or whatever. I was like, okay, do I just go for the grapefruit juice or should I at least one, I said, "Well, what do you have as a 0%?" She goes, "I got this beer." And it's a terrible beer. I said, "Do you have Heineken Zero?" She goes, "Yeah." So I have a Heineken Zero. And so they're playing music and she's dancing and we're talking and really a flow of energy and the chemistry is there. At one point, they're like blasting the music. So I'm like, hey, what the heck? So I take out my harmonica. I take out my harmonica and then I start playing it, right? So hold on, let me see if it's still here. Yeah. So I start playing my harmonica. So I'm like, and I don't even know what song I'm playing to, but I'm just kind of just wailing on the harmonica. And then, so at one point she's like, "Oh, wow, let me try." I'm like, "Sure." So then she grabs and she's like, and she's like just playing. And I'm just watching and it's just her energy. And it had been so long since I had been with a person that had that kind of bubbly, fun energy. And I was just like, and I'm completely opposite. I'm just calm. I'm I'm cool as a cucumber. I'm like, yo, man, I'm just sitting in the chair, just watching her, smiling. I got a huge grin because I'm like, wow, I love her energy. And then at one point, she's like, she finishes, and then she takes her harmonica and she she like throws it to like flip it and catch it, but instead of catching it, she literally she misses it like big time. Like it's like about 2 feet away from her, and it just fucking lands on the on the floor, and it smashes into pieces. And I'm looking at this, and where I would have been 2 years ago, just flustered and livid about she just broke the greatest harmonica there is in the world. Which, by the way, it's a really good harmonica. It's a I'm going to put it in there. It's the Marine band. Yeah. So shout out to Marine band, right? Honer and but I'm just happy she played her harmonica and I'm thinking I'm applying the 12-step program because I'm really, and it's not like I have to stop myself from being angry. I'm just let go, let God. I was just filled with gratitude to see her like that and to be on the date, whatever. Not like to be on a date like, oh my God, I haven't been on it. I was just in that mode. And I just look at her and go, whatever. And then she's like trying to put it together, whatever. She's like, I can't find the nails. And she's literally looking for like tiny nails. But in the end, it still worked, right? But now it's got like this kind of like, it's almost like a convertible harmonica. Like you can't see it on YouTube if you're listening while you're gardening, but there's actually, I'm actually holding part of my harmonica, and then there's a very loose piece if you would see. So, but when it fell and broke, or I saw the pieces, 2 different pieces at 2 different places, it's not a good harmonica. Oh yeah, and that's it. And then she puts it back together, and she goes, "Look," but she didn't put it back in the right way. So when I came to want to play it, I realized, well, there's something off here. I can't play it. So I said, hold on a second. I said, what if we? So I flipped the pieces, and then I brought it back to my mouth, and then I went. And I realized nothing happened to it. I mean, it's got experience. It's got a souvenir. I can remember how it kind of cracked in two, but now it's back together. So even the reaction of not having a reaction turned out to be a good thing, because what if I would have gotten triggered and said, tabarnak esti, right? Because it was I don't know, it would have been a French thing to do. Tabarnak esti. And in the end, I would have realized, oh, wait a minute, it's not that broken. And I think maybe that's the lesson in life, to say, okay, things don't always go as we wanted, but is it as terrible as we project it to be? Should we just maybe take a step back? So the date continued, and it was a lot of that. It was a lot of like, not breaking stuff, but just, she was just bouncing. And then I said, okay, well, if you want, I'll drive you home. And she said, oh, I'd rather go to your place. I'm like, okay, we can go to my place. Of course, by this time, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning because she's still having her beer. So we're leaving that place. It's like around 2:30, whatever. So we're back at my place. And of course, she finds the huge sound system that I have. And I'm lucky because I know that there's no one left in the building right now currently. So she's like blasting the music. And once more, I could have been triggered and go, no, you can't put that music that loud. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. And at one point, she decides that she wants to show me her dancing talents, like literally. And now we're getting a little, it's getting hot, just to say the least. And she starts to pull this like 9.5 weeks. It's an old movie. But there's a famous scene in there where the girl starts kind of dancing. Or no, wait, was that? No, maybe this is another movie. Oh, wait, was that True Lies with Arnold? It's Arnold. It's the terrible Arnold. What? I can't do Arnold right now. I can't do Arnold. I can't do Batman. Sean Connery. I can't. I can do Sean. Maybe it's just because I say his name, I can do Sean. I'm Sean Connery, and I'm Batman. Sean Connery, Batman. Sean Connery, Batman. I have a bat bag. Okay. All right. Sorry, I got lost there. So she starts, and now here's the other thing too. She is continuing to party. So she's literally partaking in her consumption. And I'm neutral with that. I'm like, you know what? If there's one thing that I learned through the steps is like you can't control people. And at one point we did have a discussion and she did mention how she did go to a therapy or two, but it didn't stick, as I could see. And she's getting more and more higher as and then she starts dancing on one of my kitchen chairs and she falls. Like seriously, like I was very concerned at that point. I was like, is she all right? And she gets back up. She goes, "Oh no, I'm okay. I'm okay." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And of course, let it go, let God. I'm not in a control mode, so I'm not telling her to stop doing that. She goes back on the chair and she falls a second time, like literally like her back slamming, like bam, and I'm like, but it's like slammed against the arm of the chair, like her back, like her back twisted, like it bent, like I'm trying to show it on camera. It bent, like this is her back. It went, brrr, you know, and then she goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's enough. I'm like, whoa. And so the date continued like that. And we did fool around lightly, but part of me was like, I there was something about the situation that didn't feel right. So I'm the podcaster. No, I put the brakes on. I could have gotten further, truth be told. I didn't want to go further. There was something in me, maybe it was my, call it self-respect, maybe my love, maybe my humility. There was something that was knowing how she wasn't there, right? She was already partaking in powdery stuff and on the corner of my stove and everything, and I was really like, just let go, let God. Now, was that the right place to say? Should I have said, no, you can't do that here, get the fuck? No, I don't think so. Because despite the craziness of that, she was a fun person. I was having a good time. And it had been a long time since I had been in the company of a woman and just laughing and just smiling and her energy. And there was something about it that I just went along with it. And finally, on my crazy date, I think it was, I mean, this is insane. It was like 5:30 in the morning, a quarter to 6 in the morning, right? Usually I'm getting up. I get up at 5 a.m. I'll do a meditation, but here I am still up, but I'm tired. I'm like, so I say, look, I'm going to bed. If you want, you can, just lie down, whatever. But of course, she's like high as a kite and she's like doing her own thing. And at one point, she says, "Oh, I have no more pot." I'm like, "What do you mean you have?" She goes, I don't have my pot anymore." I'm like, "Okay." She says, "I can't sleep without, smoking before going to bed." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then she says, "Well, I'm going to take a taxi and go home." And I said, okay. I mean, what else was I going to say? And she left. And I had a light chuckle and I was talking to JD and I said, "JD, what's up with that?" And was I relieved actually when she left the place? I know I slept right, like I fell asleep like instantly. By the time she left, it was probably like 6:30 in the morning or something like that. By the time her taxi picked her up. And yeah, it was one of those. And it was fun. It was eye opening because obviously I was confronted to a few situations that, as a recovering alcoholic, I don't know if you know, but as a recovering alcoholic, someone who decides to do a few tracks on the corner of your stove, it would have been very easy for someone to go, "You know what? I could do that too." Now, truth be told, I never got into that stuff. Many years ago, I had tried it twice. It wasn't for me. So, and even at the bar, I mean, it's easy, but I don't want that poison in my body. I just don't. I think it was an exercise of just acceptance, accepting In French, it's a term we use a lot. We say j'accueille la personne, right? I, I, I accept them for who they are. I'm not trying to change them. And I think that that's something that I was in my own lack of experience way or incompetent way doing. I know my ex, she said often that I seem to be controlling. And although I don't entirely believe that was the case, there may have been some instances where I probably lacked patience. And in this case, I was like, okay, these 12 steps, they tell me to do certain things, right? They tell me to admit some of my shortcomings, and they tell me to, to recognize them as soon as they appear. Well, one of my shortcomings is definitely the idea of, you know, controlling things, situations, perhaps even people. And now I'm letting that go. So I mean, she was smoking, under the hut as they do to the fan in the kitchen. I wasn't really aware of the smell or the intents of it. And then I woke up in the morning and I think I barely slept. Like she left probably around 6:30, 7. I fell asleep. I think I woke up around maybe 8:30, quarter to 9. And I was definitely exhausted from the night because number one, I didn't sleep, and number two, the whole, you know, logistics of, is her back okay? Is she okay? Is she gonna? At one point, she bashed into one of my lights. I'm going, oh, do I have to change the light bulb on that one too? It was just crash and burn, right? Complete self-destructive way of being, which I could understand. Well, I certainly understood the point of a person who's in that much consumption. They're running away from something. And maybe that was also the reason why I didn't want to necessarily go further, you know, with her, because I knew she has a long road to go. Now, and you guys are live here witnesses. If I was to find out within a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever that she started, joining the program, and, whether she goes through therapy or even just started going to meetings, and just even if she didn't always succeed, right? Because they say in French, ne rechute, right? So you fall off the wagon. You try to decide, okay, today I'm not going to drink. And then you screw up and then you drink. And then, okay, but the next day, just like the person that I was talking about today who had only 24 hours, if I was to hear that she was in that process, that would certainly change a lot, because we all get to that point where we need help. Do I want to be with someone who is ready for it? Yes. Do I want to be with someone who needs it and is not ready for it and is not even open to the idea? Very much likely no. No. Because you can't do anything for them, right? You can, the quirky expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Yeah. So that was my crazy date experience, and I thought I should share that with all my listeners because, hey, you never know. Stay tuned and find out on Serenity Winz how a recovering alcoholic meets women. By the way, this show is for everyone, both men and women, right? So I happen to be dating a woman, so, don't let that part, but maybe you can be like the woman thing, or I don't know. I just want my show to be for pretty much everyone, because everyone needs a bit of a boost, something like that. Okay, so Saved by the Bell. Yeah, I just realized I'm at 58 minutes. So technically speaking, if I'm only doing a 1-hour podcast, and I was going to get to the next topic, I guess I'm going to have to save it for another time. What do I say? Do I share with you what the next topic is going to be in order to keep you coming back for more? I guess I could do that. And this way also it forces me, because obviously if I share with you tonight on this episode what the next, what one of the next topics is going to be, then I have no choice but to follow through with that. Okay. So I don't know why I came up with this concept, and this was actually a few weeks ago. This wasn't this week. It was like, and there's just one word that came to me. It happens to be a coincidence that I talked to you about my crazy date. I'm just saying it's a coincidence. But the word that came to me a few weeks ago, and I said, "Oh yeah, I should do it." Maybe not an entire show, but I could do the drum roll. Hold on a second. I didn't take out the drumsticks yet, so let me sing it. So, damn. Oh, everything's brilliant. Okay, here we go. Oh, that's terrible. Hold on. No, that's cunnilingus. I don't know where that comes from, but it's a word that came to me, and I was thinking, yeah, I should do at least a topic about cunnilingus, right? Cunnilingus. For those of you who may not know, I guess it's a Latin word. It's the art of giving oral sex to a woman. Yeah. Cunnilingus. And both, you could be a guy doing that to a woman, and you can also be a woman doing that to a woman. So you see, this is the part where it goes, this show is for everybody, right? You're having a guy giving cunnilingus to a woman, great. And if you happen to be a woman giving cunnilingus to a woman, that's great too. See, the show is just for everybody. And I don't know where the idea stemmed from, but at one point I said, yeah, I could do that. And then, of course, as I got closer to recording an episode, I was like, can I do that? And what am I going to talk about? Am I an expert on that? And then today, when I'm rereading kind of, okay, what are my, and I see that I had written it. And part of me was, was. Part of me was like, if I don't do it, then I'm kind of chickening out. I'm kind of backing up. The whole Serenity Winz. Yes, it's about my journey as a recovering alcoholic and my crazy dates and this and that and my failures with the bat bag. And it's also about touching subject matters that maybe you won't hear in other places. Now, obviously, if you happen to have a monthly subscription to, say, Pornhub, you probably know a lot about cunnilingus. But if you're listening to another type of podcast, you might not get that much information on cunnilingus. So I said, you know what? I want this show to be, of course, if I say different, it sounds pretentious. I want to do things that vibrate with me. I'm not talking about cunnilingus because that vibrates with me all the time. No, I'm talking about just sharing different concepts, different ideas. And some ideas that aren't that different, and some ideas that have been around for over 90 years, such as the 12 Steps program and whatnot. So for all these reasons, next week, next episode, there will be a section, if I cannot call it an entire topic, but there will be a section titled Cunnilingus. So make sure you share and you comment and you listen, because, besides learning about cunnilingus, you might know someone who's suffering. You might be yourself someone who's suffering. You might be someone who's just starting off in the program and you're like, I go to meetings and I read a lot, but there's something I'd like a bit more. Well, maybe this podcast is for you. Or maybe you know someone who's really deep down in a dire situation, with a bottle or consumption, drugs, whatever. Maybe you can just slip them, hey, you should check out this link. And who knows? Maybe they go, well, that's not me. Or maybe they go, hey, maybe this guy with the sunglasses, maybe there's a point or two there that I could do something about that. In any case, it's my mission, and when I say my mission, I guess it's my promise to JD. I said, "Look, man, you get me out of that situation, and I'll spread your word." And far from being a preacher, I remember even recently I read the third step, which is we give our will and our life to our higher self, uh, such as we understand him, tel que le conçoit. And I guess maybe this is part of what I'm doing. I don't know. Maybe I'm having a psychosis. I'm literally being recorded as I'm having doing a psychosis. I don't think I'm doing a psychosis. I think I'm just holding on to what I said I do because to me those are important values, responsibilities and respect and the honor system. So, if this helps, great. If you know someone, who's suffering, make them listen to it. You never know. Now, with that all being said, I want to take one last moment here just to say that, hey, you remember that code there in the bottom that I don't barely talk? I remember the first time I put the code, I was like, oh, code. And now I'm like, it's there. You see it. Anyways, this code that you see there, promo code SWD10, that's a Serenity Winz discount 10%. That's right. And when you go to crusoe.ca, a great furniture importation company that does furniture. Yeah, I talked about that. Decoration ideas, stuff to put on the wall, stuff to put on your carpet, or no, stuff to put on your floor, stuff to put in your living room, bathroom, bedroom, in the garden. Hey, if you want to put your tools in one of the armoires, you could put that in the garage. It's okay. When you go to crusoe.ca and you see something you like, as soon as you purchase it, or at least you check in the box, it'll say, do you have a promo code? And you say, I do. I watched this crazy guy, Serenity Winz, SWD10, and you get a 10% discount. Because we are officially sponsored by Crusoe. And we are also not at all affiliated, associated, or sponsored by any nonprofit organizations such as Alcoholics Anonymous. This podcast is a twisted, demented creation of moi. I was going to say attempting, but it's part of the third steps in the 12-step program, and this is my version of that. And finally, to close the show, I just want to say, do it well for the self. Do it with respect for the all. And do it with the intention of love for the humanity. Like, share, subscribe, leave your comments. Everything makes a difference. So if you want to subscribe directly on YouTube, that'd be awesome. I had a blast. I had a great time. I think this time I'm actually going to know how to turn off the podcast when I say, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. I had a great time. Have yourself a great week, and we'll see each other on our next episode, number 13. Cheers.